two brilliant scientists. Both traveled the globe to pursue a scientific dream. Neither would live to return home.
People are being killed, and it's being covered up by somebody of significant power.
A young American engineer is found dead in Singapore.
He was feeling a pressure to compromise U.S. national security.
His family suspects an international cover-up.
I know that my son did not commit suicide. I know that he was murdered.
Decades earlier, an evil dictator's bid for nuclear domination.
He wanted to be the strong man of the Middle East.
Sends a brilliant physicist on a fatal journey from Baghdad to Paris.
The man was bludgeoned to death.
Their expertise took them across the world, but may have cost them their lives.
If you wanted to scare other people, then you do it gruesome.
Singapore, the economic powerhouse on China's doorstep. Corruption is low, crime almost non-existent. It's internationally known as a pillar of law and order. But on June 24th, 2012, Singapore is rocked by the sudden death of an American.
I dropped the phone and fell to the ground and just started to sob. My firstborn son is dead.
According to Singapore police, 31-year-old American electrical engineer Dr. Shane Todd has hanged himself. His family believes otherwise.
I know that my son did not commit suicide. I know that he was murdered.
After the death of their son, the Todds allege a deadly conspiracy. At its center, a sinister plot to obtain military-related technology.
I believe the science that he was doing is definitely involved in his death.
After graduating from the University of Florida with a degree in electrical engineering, Shane Todd goes on to earn a PhD from the University of California, Santa Barbara in 2010. His future prospects are bright.
He would strive to do his best at anything he was put before him. He was very driven.
Shane moves to Singapore in December 2010 to take a job at IME, the Singapore government-funded Institute of Microelectronics.
An excellent and auspicious way to start a career, where you get to kind of think about really futuristic science and its applications for commercial research.
Within a few months, Dr. Todd's chosen to lead IME's first venture into an emerging and tightly controlled new technology, Gallium Nitride, also known as GaN, a high-powered semiconductor set to replace traditional silicon in electronics and telecommunications.
Gallium nitride is much like silicon, except on steroids. Its chief virtue is that it can be operated at much higher powers than silicon devices can.
Powered by American innovation, in 2011, GaN is fast becoming a billion-dollar industry that the rest of the world wants in on, including Singapore.
Shane was working on transferring a technology that would allow IME to be able to make high-power transistors using gallium nitride.
They were very interested in Shane. Shane was just a very valuable asset to them.
Gallium nitride has hundreds of potential uses in commercial appliances. But it's also the secret ingredient in America's defense arsenal of the future. GaN-powered chips extend the range of existing radar by 50% and can search up to 5 times larger volume.
You can see things farther away. You can search more precisely. You can tell with more detail what kind of missile is coming in at you.
It's a game-changing technology that America's rivals are eager to get their hands on. And America is just as determined to stop them.
If the Russians were to develop something that has high-power radar, suddenly they can see our invisible planes.
We definitely don't want to do anything that would aid potential adversaries in acquiring this technology.
Strict American export controls are in place to keep military GaN technology out of the hands of foreign powers like Russia, North Korea, and the growing superpower, China.
China has a huge interest in GAN research.
China is so much has stated that they'll buy technology to become a powerhouse in semiconductor technology, and if they can't buy it, I think we can all assume that they will steal it.
A 2014 U.S. Defense Department report backs that up, stating that China is known to use illicit approaches to violate U.S. law in obtaining controlled technologies. IME's partner in Shane Todd's GAN project is a telecommunications company based in China.
He was concerned that the true intent was to get it to the Chinese government.
In January 2012, Shane travels to New Jersey as part of his work for IME. He is to supervise the purchase of a GAN wafer processing unit and undergo highly specialized training for its use.
They wanted Shane to go to New Jersey to get skills on the equipment that is used to grow gallium nitride on silicon.
It's a bit like cooking a recipe. Once you have the chemical formula, you need to cook it, like your grandmother in a kitchen.
But according to Shane's family, the advanced GAN recipes were to be passed on to Shane in a surprising manner.
He actually told his brother they were going to leave the room and leave the recipe notes on the table for them to copy. And his brother said, well, that sounds a little shady. And Shane goes, yeah, I know, but I guess that's the way they do it.
After his trip to New Jersey, his parents say Shane arrives back in Singapore with a growing sense of unease.
He felt that he was being asked to compromise U.S. security, and every single time we talked, he would say, Mom, I'm worried about my life. I'm afraid that I'm not going to come home alive.
And I said, Shane, if you truly believe that, you really need to come home right now.
In March 2012, Shane reaches something of a breaking point with IME and tells the Research Institute that he's giving 60 days notice.
In April 2012, Shane makes a single visit to a Singapore psychiatrist, complaining of work-related stress and anxiety. He's prescribed antidepressants, but it's not known if he actually takes them. His mother doesn't believe he was clinically depressed in Singapore. She later questions the psychiatrist about Shane's visit.
He told me out of all of his patients, Shane would be the least likely to commit suicide.
By May, Shane has secured a new job back in the States and books his flight home for July 1st. As the date draws closer, his parents say he worries his life is in danger.
He started to get even more anxious and saying, they're threatening my life.
Shane told me that we would be in touch every week, and if he did not call me, I was to email him immediately, and if he didn't call back, I was to call the American embassy and to report something was wrong. I just assured him, Shane, you're going to be fine. You're coming home.
On Sunday, June 24th, a week before his flight home, Shane's Singapore-based girlfriend visits his apartment after she hasn't heard from him in 3 days.
His front door was open, and she walked in, the lights were out, and found Shane hanging from his bathroom door.
She contacts his parents.
She was just screaming from the depths of her soul. I couldn't understand what she was saying, and finally I made out the words, Shane hung himself.
The Todds are on the first flight available to Singapore. They say their initial meeting with Singapore police leaves them stunned.
He says, do you want to hear how your son killed himself? We said, yes.
He went on to read, as if from a spy novel, a very detailed description of Shane hanging himself, that he built an apparatus with bolts and ropes and pulleys, and he told us where the toilet was and how he took the rope and put it around and then slung it over the door and hung this thing on his neck and jumped to his death.
Police then present the family with 5 typewritten suicide notes. They say were retrieved from Shane's computer.
We sat and read the suicide notes, and I knew from the moment I read the first paragraph that my son did not write those notes.
Shane's communications to his family are normally very personal. By contrast, the letters presented as suicide notes seem cold and detached. The family heads to Shane's apartment, hoping a first-hand look at the scene will make sense of a suicide that simply isn't adding up.
When Shane Todd's family then enters the apartment, there was no evidence that any of it took place the way the Singaporean police had told them.
There's no bolts, there's no ropes, there's no pulleys, and there were no holes in the marble walls. We put our hands on the walls to see if we could find anything.
For the family to go into that apartment and realize none of that was true, it raised natural suspicions.
Singapore police will later deny they ever described that Shane used bolts and pulleys to hang himself. While packing up their son's belongings, Mary and Rick Todd say they find what they believe is a desktop speaker. It's only when they return to the US, Rick realizes it's Shane's external hard drive.
He plugged it in, and sure enough, all of Shane's files came up.
And I go, this is huge. This is huge.
The Todds recruit forensic computer analyst Ashraf Massoud, a 10-year veteran of criminal investigations. On Dr. Todd's hard drive, he finds a chilling clue.
I saw that one file in particular was created on the 27th of June. That's 3 days after Shane was discovered dead in his apartment.
When Dr. Shane Todd is found dead in Singapore in 2012, his parents immediately suspect foul play. They say he was uneasy about his work with gallium nitride, a cutting-edge semiconductor with military applications. The Todds begin a search for answers, starting with forensic computer analysis of his external hard drive.
We were so concerned that it was that valuable and important, we fly it down to a forensic specialist in Southern California that very day.
Computer forensic investigator Ashraf Massoud discovers that on Shane Todd's last day at work, he copies multiple work files onto the external drive. Massoud homes in on one file in particular.
I found what I call a shadow file, but it's technically a temporary file. A corresponding temporary file is also opened and created. As a result of finding that temporary file, I can confirm that this PowerPoint was opened and viewed on the 27th, 3 days after Shane was found dead.
Well, I was shocked, and amazed, and then we knew whatever was accessed had to be a very important file.
The file is Shane Todd's proposal for his employer's development of a GaN amplifier for the Chinese telecommunications company. To better understand its significance, the Todds consult Steve Hootner, chief engineer at Nuvotronics Incorporated, where Shane was to start working upon his return to the US.
We hired him, and then we waited for him to arrive. Next thing we know was parents called up and said, Shane's not coming, Shane's dead.
Hootner reviews the proposal documents along with others on the hard drive. He discovers why Shane Todd may have been anxious about the deal between IME and the Chinese company.
Whoever he was working with at IME and the Chinese company seemed to be trying to skirt the United States export laws.
But IME and the Chinese company deny any attempt to skirt export laws. Other documents on the drive reveal in more detail the trip Shane made from Singapore to New Jersey in January 2012, including a copy of the export license for the $3 million device Shane purchased and signed for. It specifically states the equipment is only for commercial use, not for military application.
The export law at the time said that you could not export any technology that would provide over 60 watts of power.
But Hootner discovers the proposal document is asking Todd to deliver 150 watts.
When I saw the 150 watts, To me, it set off a red flag that this could be used for military purpose. They were trying to import a technology that has capabilities that we did not want to proliferate around the world.
Shane signed an agreement that this technology would not go to any foreign enemy countries. When he realized that he was being asked to give this formula, this whole machine and the training to a Chinese company, he knew that he would be breaking the law if he did that.
In 2012, American intelligence suspects devices made by this Chinese company could be used to spy for China. And as a result, the company is banned from supplying network infrastructure in America.
It has Chinese military roots. It just seems to me it's a branch of Chinese industrial complex.
Shane's parents say when he arrived back at IME in Singapore after the trip to New Jersey, he began considering quitting his job. A list of pros and cons on the hard drive reveal his possible concern at violating export laws.
Shane's family reports that he was feeling a tremendous amount of pressure to essentially compromise U.S. national security.
He was a man of integrity. His father raised him to be a man of his word, and you could depend on Shane.
By June 2012, Shane has resigned from IME and is preparing to return to the United States. His bags are being packed. His plane ticket is booked. But does Dr. Shane Todd know too much? Is his supposed suicide actually the work of professional assassins?
I think people were nervous as to what he potentially could expose about what was going on. I think there was a big cover-up regarding the death of Shane.
An external hard drive found in Dr. Shane Todd's Singapore apartment provides potentially explosive evidence about his death. Documents on the drive suggest Dr. Todd may have been pressured to share highly sensitive military-grade technology with a Chinese company.
Shane Todd's knowledge of gallium nitride and its manufacture were vital information that the Chinese government was trying to obtain.
He was not going to play ball with them to export the equipment, so I guess they decided that, game over.
The official autopsy shows no signs of foul play, although the Todds disagree, believing some marks on Shane's body are possible defensive wounds. They also dispute the authenticity of the 5 suicide notes found on Shane's computer.
He started out by thanking IME, the company that he worked for giving him every opportunity to succeed. Now, he hated that company. He had quit and he was leaving. But then it got more ridiculous.
In one suicide note, Shane thanks his parents for the memories they've made together. But one in particular raises a red flag.
There was one memory on the suicide notes about drinking Shirley Temples on the beach. That memory never happened.
The family sends the suicide notes to criminologist Dr. David Camp for linguistic analysis.
Shane was a PhD and had a very good ability in using words. Whoever wrote this is about 4 grade levels below what Shane typically wrote at.
Dr. Camp analyzes multiple samples of Shane Todd's writing to get a statistical average for his use of words and sentences.
What you get is a baseline pattern of what's normal for this person. And I compared those statistics to the document that's supposedly his suicide notes. What I found was the suicide notes did not match up at all with his normal writing. The difference was so significantly large. I'm 100% sure Dr. Todd did not write these suicide notes.
If Dr. Camp is right, could it mean Shane Todd's suicide is faked too?
Certainly to commit a homicide and stage it to look like a suicide would require a very professional team.
But the Todds and their supporters say mishandling of the crime scene made a thorough investigation of the murder theory impossible.
Things were not properly bagged, gloves were not properly used, no fingerprints were ever taken.
It was either incompetence of the crime scene people at the scene of Shane's death, or it was deliberate misapplication of forensic science to cover up what might have been a homicide.
Singapore takes things like this very, very seriously, and they have some of the finest DNA and forensic capabilities literally anywhere on Earth. The fact that there were no fingerprints ever taken, or the fact that the DNA was never tested and run through a database, to me is shocking, nothing less than shocking.
But a year after Shane's death, the Todds believe the full story is about to emerge at last.
The U.S. Embassy requested and demanded, I believe, that a more full and detailed inquiry take place.
But instead of answers, Rick and Mary Todd say all they got was more conspiracy.
They said it was going to be a discovery. We realized they don't want it. They don't want to know the truth.
In 2013, the Singapore government agrees to launch an investigation into the death of American Shane Todd in Singapore.
They said it was going to be a discovery. They were trying to get to the truth. And it became blatant that's not what they were trying to do at all.
They set out to prove a case and to prove that Shane had killed himself.
After 7 days of testimony, the Todds do something that shocks the court.
We walked out. We realized that they were not allowing us to submit evidence that our son was murdered.
We realized they don't want it. They don't want to know the truth.
On July 8th, 2013, the coroner's findings are released in a detailed 150-page report. It concludes beyond reasonable doubt that Shane Todd committed suicide and that there is no indication of foul play. To support the finding, the report cites evidence that Shane had been prescribed antidepressants 2 months before he died, and that he'd apparently used his laptop computer to research suicide methods.
I believe it's much more plausible to say that Shane was killed and then they used his computer to do the searching regarding suicide.
It appears to me that this is an elaborate and large cover-up from the highest level.
People are being killed, and it's been covered up by somebody of significant power. And in this case, it seems to be likely that it's a government.
Dr. Todd's parents and their supporters believe the evidence on the hard drive is only the tip of the iceberg, and that a wider conspiracy about their son's murder still awaits discovery.
I am trying to reconcile how the Singapore government is involved. They've lied to us so much, it makes me think that they are complicit. I'm just trying to reconcile it. I don't know how to put that together.
To bring awareness to her son's case, Mary Todd wrote a book detailing their fight for answers, titled Hard Drive. She continues to lobby the U.S. government to investigate what she sees as the murder of a patriotic American on foreign soil.
I don't know if the truth will come out, but my hope is that we will help other people to realize how serious the illegal transfer of technology to foreign enemy countries is.
I just can't imagine how difficult it must be for Rick and Mary, but I think what is important is that we have not yet seen the truth. The truth is out there. It is attainable, and the fact that we don't know it at this point continues to trouble me greatly.
Defense technology can be a deadly field. And in France, 30 years earlier, a very different scientist becomes a target. Paris, June 14th, 1980. Inside the plush Le Méridien Hotel, a brutal crime has occurred.
This was a bloody scene. The man was bludgeoned to death.
The victim is an Egyptian scientist, Yahya El-Mashad.
El-Mashad's murder was gruesome.
Cash in his wallet is untouched. The only possible clue to the killer, lipstick left on a bath towel.
looks like a crime of passion.
But the case takes on a new dimension when French police discover El Mashhad is an elite nuclear scientist who works for ruthless dictator and America's future arch-nemesis, Saddam Hussein.
Working on Saddam Hussein's nuclear program was one of the most dangerous jobs in the world.
In the late 1970s, Saddam Hussein is Iraq's absolute ruler, with dreams of becoming leader of the entire Arab world.
Saddam would describe himself as the modern-day Saladin, who could unite the Arab world in blessed wars.
To achieve his goal, Saddam craves a nuclear capability. He claims his intentions are peaceful, to harness nuclear power for energy and medical purposes. But his enemies, such as Israel, don't believe him.
Saddam Hussein at the time had decided to build a nuclear program in order to be able to create nuclear weapons to put him in a leadership position in the Middle East. Having nuclear weapons guarantees your leadership.
But Iraq needs outside help to kickstart their nuclear program. And in the midst of the 1970s oil shortage, Saddam holds a powerful bargaining chip: oil. In 1976, France comes to the table. Saddam will supply them with oil if they sell him nuclear reactors.
France wanted to have a secure source of oil. That's what Iraq represented. And the French were willing to deal with Saddam. He had to say that his nuclear program was only for peaceful purposes, and France was willing to accept those assurances.
The French agreed to supply Saddam with nuclear technology, including reactors and high-grade uranium fuel. The justification for high-grade uranium is that it's needed for medical radiology. But as he tours a French nuclear facility, he is missing a crucial piece of the puzzle: nuclear scientists.
Saddam was starting from scratch. Really, Baghdad had nothing at all when it came to nuclear know-how.
The task of assembling Saddam's nuclear dream team falls to Imad Kaduri.
I'm a nuclear scientist, Iraqi nuclear scientist.
For 30 years, Kaduri was a leading figure in Iraq's nuclear program. Eventually, in 1997, he would flee Saddam's regime, seeking refuge for his family in the United States. But in the mid-70s, he's tasked with turning Saddam's nuclear ambition into reality, and he's handsomely rewarded.
We as scientists, we're given privileges. We have very high salaries, the best at Iraq at the time.
In 1977, Kaduri discovers a brilliant Egyptian physicist, Yahya El-Mashhad, on sabbatical at Baghdad University of Technology.
I was impressed with El-Mashhad immensely. He was so bountiful of ideas and science.
El-Mashhad obviously was outstanding. He excelled.
Kaduri wants to recruit El-Mashhad, but he's got stiff competition from other countries.
El-Mashhad was very highly prized, and that he was approached by the Israelis to work with them, and he refused.
America might also be interested in El-Mashhad, but he tells Kaduri he doesn't want his family growing up in Western influence.
And he said, Iraq is a Muslim country and is doing good work, and I can fit in this work. And the day after that, he was appointed the highest salary, even higher than the minister in Iraq.
With El-Mashhad on board, Kaduri's team begins work on the complex equations that will be required to operate the French nuclear reactors, so-called neutron transport codes.
The Iraqi scientists created a computer code to calculate the burnup inside the reactor, that is, turning a peaceful program into a weapons program.
Although the code is used mostly for weapons production, Kaduri claims they worked on them only as a scientific challenge.
Nobody told us to do it. It was just scientific curiosity. At the time, it was 100% peaceful.
Now, they want to check if their calculations are correct. For this, they'll need long-lost nuclear research supplied 20 years earlier by American President Eisenhower, when Iraq was still an ally.
The United States had given Iraq a present in 1956, a whole library on nuclear subject matter. So I had a hunch. I began digging, where is this library? What happened to it? And I ended up in a room in the top of the library building, and there was a chest there with about 5 centimeters of dust. When I opened it, the Manhattan Project document reports were in that chest.
Now Kaduri is able to check El-Mashad's codes against the Americans' formulas. He finds out El-Mashad has precisely matched the codes used to produce the Nagasaki and Hiroshima atomic bombs. El-Mashad's breakthrough takes Saddam a critical step closer to a nuclear weapon. El-Mashad quickly rises to the top of the Iraq nuclear program, overseeing the French deal to provide nuclear infrastructure.
Al-Mashad, as head of the program, supervised the deal with the French, bringing in all the parts, the construction crews. He now became, in effect, an executive of a construction project for one of Saddam Hussein's dreams, a nuclear Iraq.
The final deal brokered by El-Mashad includes 2 reactors and 205 pounds of 93% enriched uranium. With Al-Mashad's know-how, Saddam will have everything he needs to build a bomb.
The 2 reactor cores were about to be shipped by France to Iraq from Toulon in southern France.
But on April 6, 1979, there's a major setback to Saddam's plans.
Men were able to break into that facility in Toulon, locate the reactor cores that were destined for Iraq, put explosives on them, and destroy both of them.
In April 1979, Iraq's top nuclear engineers, Dr. Imad Kaduri and Dr. Yahya El-Mashad, are awaiting delivery of 2 nuclear reactors from France. But before they can be shipped, masked men destroy Saddam's precious package.
They blew up the reactor core while it was being shipped in a port in the south of France.
The attackers have expert knowledge of nuclear reactors. They're able to target the most crucial area, known as the beehive.
The beehive section of the reactor, or the core of the reactor, is where the fission reaction takes place, where the fuel is held. And so damaging that section means damaging the heart of the reactor.
The saboteurs leave no clues. But previously classified CIA documents suggest Israel, highly concerned about Saddam's nuclear weapons ambitions, is the most likely perpetrator.
Israel approached France, not once, many times, begged France, please don't sell the nuclear reactor.
And according to some intelligence insiders, when France refuses to listen, the Israeli intelligence agency, Mossad, decides to act.
The decision was made to demolish them before they were shipped to Iraq.
If the saboteurs hope the attack will derail Saddam's plans, they're soon disappointed.
The French offered to manufacture new reactor cores and deliver them to Iraq quite quickly. The program was delayed for a few months, but the Mossad had hoped that it would be a few years. They had to think of other ways to hit the Iraqi program.
Mossad apparently switches from targeting Saddam's nuclear hardware to targeting his nuclear scientists. At the top of the list, Yahya El-Mashad. By the beginning of 1980, Saddam has already assembled the rebuilt reactor in Baghdad. Now, all he needs is the weapons-grade 93% enriched uranium-235, which France has promised to deliver.
When we mine uranium from the earth, the uranium-235 content is very low, below 1%. For a weapon, we need that percentage to be much higher, upwards of 90%. This process is very complex and requires a lot of know-how, technology, and a lot of time as well.
Know-how, technology, and time that Iraq does not have. So it's a disaster for Saddam when France succumbs to international pressure and supplies him with a lower enriched fuel called caramel.
Caramel is a nuclear fuel where uranium-235 is enriched to 7.5%. This is higher than typical reactor-grade fuel. However, it's much lower than what is needed for a weapons program.
In military terms, Saddam's reactors are rendered useless. Frustrated and furious, he decides to send a personal envoy to Paris to force the French to honor their promise. He chooses El-Mashhad.
Dr. al-Mashhad, being such a knowledgeable scientist, was sent by the Iraqi government to negotiate with the French. We insisted on the 93%.
In June 1980, Yahya El-Mashhad arrives in Paris and checks into the Le Méridien Hotel. Talks with the French are tough, but El-Mashhad stands his ground.
He actually succeeded in defeating the French request to lower the enrichment, that they should stick with the 93%.
On the night of June 14th, an exhausted El-Mashhad returns to the Le Méridien. But on his way into the hotel, a mysterious woman crosses his path.
A French lady tried to seduce him in the lobby of the hotel. Supposedly, she went up with him to his room.
At noon the next day, El-Mashhad is found dead.
If you wanted to scare other people that are involved in a program, then you do it gruesome.
When Saddam Hussein's top nuclear scientist is murdered in Paris, suspicion falls on an unknown woman seen with him before he died.
The French police suspected that the prostitute had gotten angry at her client and had beaten him to death.
The woman is identified as Paris prostitute Marie-Claude Megal. When questioned by police, she claims she knows nothing about El-Mashhad's murder. Could she be an assassin working for Israeli Secret Service Mossad?
I am convinced it was the Israeli Mossad, although they don't say these things themselves.
But former Mossad officer Victor Ostrovsky has inside knowledge of the case. He believes Marie-Claude was bait for a trap laid by Mossad.
They tried to create a situation in which he would be blackmailed.
It's alleged that Mossad pays Marie-Claude Megal 5,000 francs to lure El-Mashhad.
They had him in a very uncomfortable situation with the hooker. They say, we are going to expose what just happened here. We have the means, we have the ways.
An alternative source says he refused the prostitute's advances. Either way, Mossad is unable to turn El-Mashhad or make him quit Iraq's nuclear program.
He made it very clear that he's not going to be blackmailed. And he's going to keep doing what he's doing. He was very adamant about it.
It's believed Mossad operatives then made a deadly decision.
He ought to be eliminated. Mossad killers bludgeoned him to death.
If you wanted to scare other people that are involved in a program, then you do it gruesome.
We went to the airport to see his body off, flown back to Baghdad, and I was crying. Bitterly.
Marie-Claude Megal, as the last person to see El-Mashhad alive, is the French investigators' only chance at solving the case. But before she could be interviewed again, she dies too.
So she was killed by a Mercedes car that veered in as somebody pushed her into the road, made it look like an accident. That was a field decision to take her out.
With her dies any chance to prove that El-Mashad's death was a Mossad hit.
Because she was a liability, because she knew the people that hired her and put her in together with Mishad, and it could be identified by her.
The only rule in a Mossad mission is that no one should get caught. Beyond that, there's no morality. The assassination is a way of striking at an enemy of Israel. You consider that person like a soldier. It's totally fine to kill that person.
No one is ever charged with El-Mashad's murder or for the death of Marie Claude.
But the Mossad many years later said privately, no, we didn't kill her. It's just a coincidence that she died.
The Mossad has admitted that it will deny any cause or any connection to anything that they're blamed of doing.
As far as the Israelis are concerned, this was a successful mission. El-Mashad was killed, the killers got away, and the Iraqi nuclear program was delayed.
But El-Mashad is quickly replaced, and the nuclear program is soon back on track.
It didn't stop us. It didn't make us afraid.
Within a year, the world is once again facing the prospect of a nuclear-armed Iraq.
The Israelis realized that the reactor was going to come online within a month or two.
So in June 1981, Israel strikes again at Saddam's nuclear program. And this time, its attack is open and aggressive. Fighter jets target Iraq's nuclear reactor on the outskirts of Baghdad.
And they dropped bombs exactly on the building where the French big reactor is and destroyed it.
Saddam's nuclear ambitions have taken another huge hit. And 10 years later, the Gulf War ends them completely.